So then I layered a second piece of trace on top, and this is where I started sketching. Now, it's really hard to draw an organic kind of onion pumpkin shaped object, but you just have to try and practice. And so what I did first was I was able to see the shape at the underneath part of my, in the underlay. And remember, it looks like this. And so I had to draw next this part, because that's the footprint of my onion shaped dining pod here. So I began by creating those lines here and brought them across here, okay? And I didn't pull out the entrance yet, but I just tried to get the smoothest possible ellipse that I could be. Now remember, it's gonna be elongated on these corners and foreshortened on these corners. And whatever you do, you can't go past that box that it came in right here, that ground line. Okay, so that's really important. You can see I went over just a little bit there, but I fixed it in the next draft. So once I had that ellipse there, then I was able to start to figure out the profile. So the next thing I did was I tried to establish this line here to try to get it as big and curvy as possible, because remember, I've got a dining chair and table in here that I'm going to have to accommodate. So it took me, you can see, a lot of sketching, but I didn't do short hairy lines. I did long continuous lines that I kept drawing over and over and over again to get some muscle memory in. And then eventually I was able to kind of land on a good profile line. And then I came up here and created this other little curve. And then I was able to connect that curve back up to that center point of the X where we had this on the ceiling. Once I had that, then I connected those points. You can see here, there's a point here, a point here. And then I was able to connect those back to my vanishing point. And you can see here, that's where, if I drew a line right here, that's where the bottom of the one over here starts, right? Because they're at the same level. So then I was able to do that here and create the guidelines. Okay, so then once I had that, I was able to then start to infill this side. Now, when we're doing the other side and we have the locations of the vanishing points and where these would stop and start, then it's just a process of echoing these lines. So you can see these are the same general shape, but this one's smaller because it's closer to this vanishing point over here. The same thing, this line here is the same as this line here, or I'm using it as a guide, but it's just a little bit shorter, it's a little bit more compressed. So I was able to start to bring in the lines on this side just by echoing the lines on that side. Then I was able to connect back down and over, okay? Once again, using my vanishing points as a guide, and then create this line that's here, and then this line that was here. Now I had to create an offset of this line because you can see there's a little bit of thickness right here. And that's one of the ways that we know that this object has thickness. Then I was able to think about my hand. Remember how I taught you this trick where if it's above the vanishing point, you see the top of your hand, and if it's below the vanishing point or below your eye level, you see the top, and if it's above, you see the bottom. So you can see, once I had those curves, I was able to come in with this curve and this curve. And you can see here, it's really a gentle curve here, and it's actually trying to be the mirror image of this curve down here. That's how I used it as a guide, okay? So it was a really, really subtle curve. And then same thing with this curve here. It's really trying to kind of echo the softness of that curve there. Okay, once I had those elements in, you can see here, I'll start to outline them. Notice I'm not drawing like real short hairy lines like this. I'm drawing really continuous ones, and if yours are wobbly and you don't feel confident doing this, it means that you need to sketch more. Okay, so these lines came in like this. And then again over here on this side. And then I was able to pull in the floor lines here. Okay, now the really important lines that you have to make sure you get right is these lines here, so you make sure you get the thickness for your viewer to understand what's going on. This very subtle curve down here and this corner, that has to be right, and it's the same curve as this one. They're echoes of each other or close in silhouette. You have to get this line right and this line right, because that's what indicates the form. Same thing here, this one, and that one's important. Because the viewer's not necessarily going to pick up on all the subtleties, but they're going to look at the edges to figure out how this thing comes together. Okay? Okay, so once I had that, then I was able to move to my final step where I can get a sense for some finishes and shading and textures.